Welcome everybody. Hello.
Good afternoon.
All right. Thank you everybody and welcome back. Those of you that have been joining us throughout our sessions and welcome to the new people that have, just joined for today. So we're going to go ahead and invite everybody to add your name, your city, and your role in the chat for us so we know who's in the building today. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Ingrid. So the ages that this particular session, all of our sessions are birth to 5. So that would be um, all the way up until kindergarten. So your infants all the way through children that are ready for kindergarten. Thanks for asking. We definitely want to make sure that you guys are in the right sessions. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for sharing your cities. I see some Maryland, some Ohio. Nice to have you all. Lots of Dayton in the building, in the room. I keep saying building. Nice to have you guys back. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We appreciate everyone joining, and we want to respect your time for joining with us today. And so we're going to move into our poll. And so the poll does have 4 questions. You're going to see it pop up on your screen. When it pops up, go ahead and answer those questions for us. This just lets Nathan and I know how to prepare and to continue making sure that this session is as productive and helpful for you guys. So let us know by answering those 4 questions. So have you attended any of our previous ecosystem cohorts? Are you already a Cox Campus member? What best describes your role? And then the last one is, have you completed the ecosystem course, which is a prerequisite that we did ask you all to complete prior to signing up for the sessions. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. And so I'll let my coworker get started. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nathan Thompson. I'm a language and literacy instructional facilitator with the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy at Cox Campus. And my core values are family, connection, and authenticity. I have been in education in the birth through 5 field for 25 years. I consider myself an activist, a coach, a leader, an educator. So I've had some different roles all here in Georgia. It's good to be with you guys.
Awesome. And so, like Nathan, I am Jennifer Jones. I'm also a language and literacy instructional facilitator with Rollins. And my core values are also family, integrity, and discipline. And I've been in the field of early childhood education for 16, almost 17 years. Um, and I do have most of my background and experience comes from Louisiana. I'm new to Georgia. I've been in Georgia for 3 years now. And so definitely enjoying the Georgia state. And so I appreciate being a part of this cohort with you guys and look forward to spending some time with y'all today. Nice to have you. All right. So we're going to jump into the Cox Campus way. So we have core values for Cox Campus as well. So I'm going to go through those. The first one is rewarding. So our hope is for all of our Cox Campus members to become your best selves through the various experiences offered on our website. The second core value we have is empowering. So we want you to know that you and your work are valued when you visit Cox Campus. Connecting. Cox Campus is a shared space where all of our educators come from different or some similar walks of life, and they can come together and learn and grow in the same space. The fourth value is safe. So it's a safe space where you can feel welcomed and accepted and get your answers, the answers that you need to deepen your understanding and take your teaching practices to the next level. And the last core value we have at Cox Campus is essential. So Cox Campus will always deliver current research and appropriate methods and practices that you can learn and apply right away. So we always encourage you to come back again and again to Cox Campus. So if you are not a Cox Campus member, so this is your chance now to visit www.coxcampus.org. And once you sign up, everything is free. You will have access to over hundreds of different resources, some courses, and materials that you can use for your classrooms. We did drop it in the chat, so go ahead and jot that down. If you do have a few minutes, you can take some time and just kind of click on it, save it for later, and right after this session, go ahead and complete your profile.
All right, our icebreaker today is, are you a cat or a dog at work? So you can unmute and let us know, or you can put it in the chat. Considering your position at work, I saw some owners, directors, ed specialists, lead admins, some different roles there. So I'm wondering, do you think of yourself more like a dog or a cat, and why? Why would you choose? So Charlotte said dog. Why are you a dog at work, Charlotte?
Good afternoon. Because dogs are considered to be really loyal, and so I'm a loyal and dedicated employee.
Awesome. Great, great, great answer.
Sarah also said loyal dog, eager to help. I
Eager
love
to
it.
help. Yep.
Mhm.
She's all over the
Specifically,
center. You're all over the center. A Jack Russell. That's funny.
Jack Russell, I like it.
Do we have any dog moms, dog dads?
Mm. Anybody consider himself a cat at work? Ah, there we go. Bouncing from thing to thing as needed. I also consider myself more like a cat. I think the similar reason. Some
Yep, we have a leader cat
independent,
in the
a
chat.
leader cat.
Yeah.
What about you, Jennifer?
I guess it depends. Like I could be both, but um, I would say maybe a cat. Yeah, I would say a cat because I'm somewhat of like a loner. Like I can kind of do my own thing and be, like Jenny just said, flexible, but also a leader. Yep. But I do have dog tendencies. I am loyal.
I'm a dog person and allergic to cats, but I love cats. I think they're beautiful. I would say sometimes I'm like a cat, that I tend to prefer to do it by myself, so I know it gets done and I know it's done as correctly as possible. I don't like to too many other people drop the ball, I think sometimes. And I'm one, when I do an evaluation, I want to type it up immediately, go into HIS, do the billing immediately. So like I sometimes feel like I'm like a dog with a bone. I don't let go until it's done. And then what other people had said, loyal. I love the reference about the Jack Russell because they're all over. I like the thing about the cat bouncing from one thing to another as needed.
Yeah,
So probably a mix of them all.
yeah, we're a cat dog.
And I'm having trouble with my keyboard with my keys freezing and sticking. So if my typed response is delayed, it's because I'm not getting it to type the way I want it to. So just an FYI, they told me I'm getting a new laptop. So
Ooh.
it's
Well,
been very frustrating. My
aw.
N's and my R's and my B keys are not working well at all. So,
Well, thank you for letting us know, Trisha. Appreciate it.
sure.
Any other responses?
I like that idea of a cat dog. There used to be a cartoon called Cat Dog.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it made me think of. Cool.
Thank you all for sharing out. Feel free to put in the chat if you think of anything else. All right, so our objectives today are we're going to review the 9 essential elements of an ecosystem. We're going to reflect on element 6 from last month. So just to kind of let us know, if you were here last month, just raise your hand or put a little hand in the chat or say I was here last month. So we know kind of how many people are a little bit familiar with element 6, emergent literacy. And I'll let you do that while I continue. I see some hands raised here. Element 7 is what we're going to move into today. So we're going to discuss the look-fors, the examples, the rating criteria for classroom observations, and then talk about how we're going to set goals and consider what action steps we need to write next for improvement in the element 7. And element 7 is about progress monitoring, and we'll get into that. All right, as always, we have a set of norms. We just ask that you, and we also offer that we will be open-minded and flexible to change, step up and step back. So please step up to participate and engage, but also allow space for others to do so as well. Be present, respect opinions and communication styles, listen to understand, and commit to pause and reflect throughout. So we want to allow that space when necessary and offer some time to reflect. All right, this is the purpose of these monthly year-long journey sessions for this cohort on the ecosystem. The purpose is to provide support for strengthening language-centered ecosystems at a larger scale so that all children have an opportunity to be a part of an effective ecosystem that is established in all 9 essential elements. We want to build community among a diverse group of individuals, working towards positive relationships and progress in child outcomes in language and literacy development.
All right. So like Nathan said, we're going to describe the 9 ecosystem elements. And so our elements are broken up into 3 clusters. And so we have the climate clusters, which has the first 3 elements. Those elements are the safe and responsive climate. The second one is culturally responsive and preserving environments. And the third element in that cluster is consistent routines, rituals, and transitions. The second cluster is our content clusters. And so this cluster focuses on the practices and strategies that where we intentionally focus on promoting and developing language and literacy foundational skills. So the element that we are focusing on today, particularly in this cluster, is element 7. And so that one is the observation in progress monitoring. So this element focuses on the practices that allow us to know how children are progressing and how they're benefiting from the learning experiences, and how we must adjust our practices and refine our practices so that our teaching is more effective and it addresses the learning needs of all children. And then the third cluster is the connections cluster. So this one has the elements 7, 8, and 9. And so those last ones focus on connections. So with individual children to assess their progress, it covers dual language learners support and learning and participation with families and ways to extend their learning beyond the classroom onto as well as in the home. Okay.
All right, so what are our expectations? We just want to be really clear about the expectations for this, what to expect. So each month we meet to go over one essential element. We go back and cover the month before as a reflection, but we're here to cover and talk about one in particular, which is the 7th today. We'll talk about why each element is important, what each element looks like, and then the observations and what that can look like, and what action steps you can take to make improvements.
All right, so this is our chance to pause and reflect. And so, like Nathan asked earlier, if everybody had taken the emergent literacy course. So if you did take the emergent literacy course, we do ask that you kind of put in the chat if you did or didn't, or maybe raise your hand using the reactions. So this will give us an idea on if we want to move things in the direction of a breakout room so you guys can discuss how that course went, or if we didn't get everybody, everybody didn't have a chance to take that course, then we do want to shift things into maybe a whole group activity where we can practice some of the things that was covered in that course. So we'll just have everybody take a moment to kind of pause and just think about, did you guys take that course or not? And just let us know so we can move forward. So we're just going to check the chat for your responses.
I did put a link to the course, just if you want to click it and see as a reminder, and also save it for later.
Okay. So just counting just to see what are we looking like now.
And this course, just FYI, I see a lot of courses taken during the pandemic. This is actually a newer course, just so you know. It was released last year.
Okay. Do we get a little count going? Do we know?
I see a 1 yes and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 no's so far.
I'm just going to give you guys a few more seconds so everybody can get a chance to chime in. We want to make sure that everybody has a response. Okay. And we have 20 people on today. And so how many is that? You said 7 no's and
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8 no's, and somebody's checking, and two yeses, looks like, possibly.
okay. Okay, she said no. Okay. Did everybody have a chance to respond before we move on to the options? So 1, 2, Okay. So, all right. So it looks like majority of us didn't get a chance to take that course, and we still encourage you to do so. So, and Nathan, you said you did drop it in the chat so that they could take a look at it.
The link is in
Okay.
the chat. Yeah.
Great. So we are going to move into the whole group options. And so we planned some activities for us to do as a whole group. And so we do appreciate your honesty. So thank you. Because this lets us know how to move. And we want to make sure that you guys are getting the best experience when you visit these sessions. So the activity that we have is going to be a reflection activity for the emergent literacy course. And so the name of this activity, and it was pulled directly from Cox campus. So I encourage you guys to visit Cox after this and pull these activities and have fun with your classes with these activities. And so this activity is specifically for transitions, attention getters, just some fillers that you can use throughout the day. This one is not necessarily where you would spend time in instruction. And I wanted to show you the difference between the two. And so we're going to have two activities we do together. And so for this one, I'm going to need 2 volunteers. And so if I can get 2 people to either come up off mute and say your name or drop your name in the chat, and we are going to play the name cheer game. Okay, we have Amber as 1 volunteer. And I need 1 more volunteer, just 1 more.
Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so we have Sarah and Amber. Okay, so the way that this activity goes, I'm going to say the syllables of each of your names separately, and then we're going to practice blending those sounds together. So I'm going to demonstrate using Nathan as an example. So we're going to do an I do, and then we're going to do a we do, and then we're going to do a you do. All right, so first, I need everybody to take their selves off of mute. And so we're going to all practice together so that I can hear everybody's voices so that we are all on the same page. So is everybody off mute?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, great. So, all right. So Nathan and I will do it first. So give me a nay.
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 Good. Give me a thin.
Then.
Thin.
All right. So when we put those together, those 2 sounds together, what do we get?
Nathan.
Nathan.
Nathan. So we blended nay and thin to make Nathan. So we're gonna do the same. Yay! So we're gonna do the same thing with our 2 volunteers, Amber and Sarah. And so let's start with Amber. So class, give me a am.
Am.
Am,
Now give me a burr.
burr,
What do you have with am and burr?
amber,
Amber.
Amber, good. So we blended am, A-M, and burr, B-E-R, to make amber. So this is a fun and easy activity that we can do. And now we're going to practice. Now you guys will do it on your own using Sarah's name. So the first sound we will break up is, everybody say, sa. I'm saying it wrong. Sa, sa.
Sa.
Now, ruh.
Ra.
Now let's blend sa and ruh together. Sarah.
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 Sarah. Very good. So we blended sa, S-A, and ruh, R-A-H, together to make Sarah. So this was a phonological sensitivity activity, blending syllables. So this activity, as I said earlier, is only used for transitions, brain breaks, attention getters, fillers throughout the day. So they're not necessarily for instruction. They're only, so these are not instructional activities, but these are activities that you can use throughout the day to just kind of fill throughout the day whenever you have some idle time, you have, you want to transition from whole group to centers, or centers to outdoor time, or while you're waiting for something. These are some activities that you would use for that. So let's jump into the next activity. And thank you all for participating. That was fun. Okay, so now we have an activity that's called phonemic awareness. And so this is an activity that you would use specifically during instructional time. So the target skill for this one is phoneme isolation and receptive. Okay, and so with this activity, today we're going to work on listening for the first sound in words. So remember, words are made up of individual sounds. So let's look at the first picture on this slide. So this picture is a picture of a sun. So watch me say the word sun. Sun. So every time my mouth changes, I made a different sound. So when I say the word sun, the first sound you hear is S. So let's listen for the S sound in two other words. So in the center, you see the picture of a sock. And this picture on the end is a hat. I want you to know which one of these items starts with the S sound. Let's listen as I say the sound we're looking for and the word. Which one of these words starts with the S sound? Sock or hat? I would point to which one. Come up off mute or put it in the chat.
Sock.
Sock, correct. So I would have pointed at the picture in the middle for sock. The first sound in the word sock is S. The letter S, which is bolded and underlined, shows and spells S. So this is a phonemic awareness activity. This activity would be specifically for instructional time in a preschool and pre-K classroom. So the difference between the first activity and this one is that this one, you're going to use more instructional minutes out of your day. So you can use this for small group time. You can use this for whole group time. You can use this anytime that you are wanting to work on particular skills with your children. This is a phonemic awareness activity. So the other one is for your transitions and your brain breaks and whatnot. And so this activity is also found on Cox campus, and there's another host of activities that you can grab for free, download these. They come with the pictures, and so you can use these for your children ages 4 and 5. Any questions, any comments anything you want to lift up from these two activities, please take the time to do so right now. And I hope these were fun, y'all. And they were easy. And I wanted to, give you guys just a snippet of some of the content that's shared in the emergent literacy course if you haven't taken it. So this kind of stuff was shared in that course. And so I encourage you to go back and take this course so that you can get more knowledge and information and experience around emergent literacy and how you can incorporate it in your classrooms.
Jennifer, I have a question.
Yes.
I put it in the comment, but can these activities can be embedded in whatever other activities are being done in the classroom? Let's say they're singing a song and starts with I don't know, with some type of letter. Maybe you can bring quickly that awareness when you're doing that, or reading the title of a story or a picture in a book, or just to bring that awareness in a very organic way as well.
Yes, You
Okay.
can, you can. And there's also some examples you'll find on Cox that have other ways to do this. And so this is just one of the examples. But yes, you do want to, take advantage of your thematic books or lessons that you're teaching, for your children or your classroom. But this is just, an isolated activity that you can do with your children, in small group or whole group, depending on the size of the class. But yes, that's a good question. You can also lift up other ways to do this.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? Okay, very good, guys. Thanks. All right, so this tool here is called our Ecosystem Construction Measure 2.0. So this tool here is intended for self-reflection and self-growth. It supports the implementation of best practices, and we do encourage all of our partners here that are visiting to download a copy of this document so that you can use it to help guide some of the improvement that you want to see at your sites. And so this is also free, and it's also found on Cox campus. We will drop the link in the chat for you. And so this is the document that we've been referring to throughout all of our sessions, and we'll continue until the very end. Okay. Next slide. All right. So this document here is a companion to the document you just saw. So it's called the Closer Look at the Essential Elements. And so this document here, it describes all 9 of the elements in detail. And it'll give you some examples, some video samples, and it'll give you some other opportunities for you to, further your learning and your practice. And the only thing that we did change in our last session is that element 6, emergent literacy, that particular area is under construction because we are updating it with new research and new information, but all of the other elements remain the same.
All right, now we're going to get into element 7 about observation and progress monitoring. So what is it? This element takes a close look at the site's policies and practices for monitoring children's development progress in all areas. So we'll follow a cyclical process. We're going to look at an observation cycle that relies heavily on observation and expected child outcomes, where teachers collect information and reflect on where children are in their development and use their findings to inform their caregiving and teaching. They also use these opportunities to get to know each child better and to develop the nurturing relationships that support and advance learning. Teachers view families as partners in all phases of this process and seek and value their input and knowledge of their children to gain a more comprehensive understanding of their development. So understanding the children so we know how to approach them and have a relationship and build upon and scaffold their learning as well, understanding them and their families. All right, why does this matter? Continuously observing children and systematically assessing their progress allows teachers to have a better understanding of how they are learning and the progress they are making toward expected developmental outcomes. So this would allow teachers to take supportive actions, plan, implement learning experiences that support children the best. When teachers know what's expected of children in language and literacy development, and they take the time to observe, monitor their progress, and use this information to refine their teaching, their instruction is much more engaging, effective, and we see more positive outcomes for the children. This process also will allow teachers to identify children who might have additional needs and may require more in-depth professional evaluation or supports. So it's good for all of this. All right, here's the cycle I was talking about. This is really important to follow because the whole point of progress monitoring and observing and keeping any type of data or notes is so that we can provide the best learning and development and care for children. So the first part, I'll just go through it briefly, but we're going to break down each one of these today. The first one is set clear destination and learning goals. That might be your development standards. So really just in the beginning of the year, in the beginning of getting to know children in your classroom, setting those clear goals. I just saw the question in the chat. I think we can share that. We are sharing this recording on Cox Campus, which has the slides. So we'll see about if we can send out the slides. We'll check on that. Thank you for asking. All right, and then the second phase is implement learning activities aligned with the goals. So put that into action. Then observe, record, and assess what you see as you're doing that while you're building relationships. And then this part is crucial. And I think sometimes we are so caught up on deadlines for, oh, thank you. The PowerPoint will be sent out. So we're so caught up on like deadlines around getting the information in and assessments and data. But when do we take the time to actually reflect on those data and those results? So that's what number 4 is about. And the 5th one is respond to that. So those go together, reflect and respond, and make those adjustments in your environment and your teaching so that you can set new goals. So let's look at the first phase. First one is set a clear destination and learning goals. All right, let's go to the next slide. So at the beginning of the school year, if you don't have much data on a child, what can you do? What do you have to start your first lesson plan? Your first in August or whenever your classroom starts, you get your new children and the teachers that you work with. What do they use? And actually, I'm asking you, like, you can put in the chat things that information that you have or that your teachers have at the beginning of the year. Now, I do have some examples up here. So general research-based information about the age group, enrollment information, that's good. So looking at state standards, so what do children of this typical age group need? And yes, from the enrollment information, that has to do with what we learn from families as well. But going back to the first one, so those state standards, those Rollins expected child outcomes, those are found on Cox Campus, and they're related to Georgia Early Learning and Development Standards, which are also related to they're related to WSO and TSG. They also can tie into whatever state you're in. They are connected. We just happen to have the GELDs on there for Georgia Early Learning and Development Standards. And the information from families from enrollment, sending out surveys. We have a family survey on Cox Campus, and then having an orientation, a conference, and then of course getting to know if they were in a classroom previous to that, get that information from them. And I see ASQ and enrollment forms, multilingual learners, those home language interviews, yes. And our survey on Cox Campus for language and culture is really for all children and getting to know not just their language, but also their culture. And that's all information that you need to start off the school year. All right. Go to the next slide. All right. So that's kind of like an overview for that one. For the second phase, now that we have that information, we have the goals we want to set, we need to move into how to do that, how to get the children to do these things. And that's when we implement learning activities aligned with goals. And I'm going to ask you again to put in the chat. Thank you for the interaction here and sharing out. What types of ways do you take those goals and then plan activities? So you can put that in the chat as we go on to the next slide. This is one way that we recommend doing at sites and centers and schools, and it's called bubble maps. And this is something that we have available on Cox Campus. We have a blank one, but we also have some that are filled out. And basically what you do is set a book as an anchor book and make that the main theme and curriculum. And you can have several books, obviously. But this one takes the book brick by brick, and then you're going to look at what vocabulary and concepts are we pushing out here in the classroom, and how can we do that in different areas. And as you can see here, it has outdoor activities, family connections, morning meeting, writing, block area, dramatic play, math and block area. So there are different areas in your classroom, even just like setting up the environment in these areas, as well as planning activities related to this. So when you have your goals, this is one way to just start out by planning. And there are different lesson plan formats. This one is really meant to be done as an overall start, and then you take these and put them into a lesson plan. And the sites that we work with, we encourage teachers to do this in what we call common planning, where they're sitting together with similar teachers of similar age groups and planning these and sharing and have a conversation around it. So it's common planning, we're working together, and then they take these back and put them into their individual lesson plans. Any thoughts on this? Has anyone ever used this type of format? Some people call it a web. We call it bubble map. All right, feel free to share in the chat. We'll go on to the next one. I know I did talk around it a little bit, but I am going to let Lethea share with you the method and let you see a little bit from the course around bubble maps.
Map is a graphic organizer that helps you plan out how you will extend vocabulary and story concepts from your anchor book throughout the week. It allows you to easily sketch out meaningful learning activities and experiences, and plan opportunities for you to monitor children's progress directly related to your learning goal. Let's watch Carenza and Maggie use a bubble map to plan activities around an anchor book. Although they are pre-K teachers, planning around an anchor book is equally effective with all age groups.
So I'm so excited to plan with you today, Maggie. Definitely just thinking about our goals and where we are right now. I know we looked earlier at the TSGs and also at the child expected outcomes. And I think we were thinking more so at where, after observing the children, where we feel is we need to look at using tier 2 words in complex sentences when discussing stories.
I think that's a great one right here. Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, what do our children understand and comprehend about the stories that we're reading?
Yeah. And how do we know what kind of language they're using as they talk about the book? Those are great questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So today maybe we just think about our anchor book, plan around maybe some focused vocabulary words that we want to lift up to definitely make sure that we're encouraging them to lift that language in our small groups and in our extension activities. Our anchor book this week, I'm thinking should be Fish is Fish,
That's
which
a
is
fun
one of my
one.
favorites. This book, I know you've read it a million
Many
times
times,
also,
yeah.
but love the connection to friendship and also around the life cycle.
Yeah.
And as I was thinking that we could possibly also include a nonfiction book to this.
That's great.
And with this, we could possibly even have the life cycle of the frog and actually pair the book, read the book to them, and then also have maybe create cards and have them read, talk around the different stages of the life cycle. So including the tadpole and the froglet and going into the adult frog. What are your thoughts around that?
I think that's great, and I appreciate, Carenza, how you started with the expected child outcomes, so we kind of know where we're going, what we can observe and teach around and see how they're developing and growing with their language. And then also we have that book that's going to kind of tie it all together. So we have this goal, and but then still having connections like you made to the science, and maybe we can even bring in a few other focus areas, like when you talked about life cycles, I thought about the TSG standard.
Yes.
For science, there's one that observes, explores, and describes a variety of plants and animals, describes their basic needs and the life cycle of living things. So that's perfect.
That is
So as we
perfect.
explore that central question, we're still bringing in other elements throughout the day.
I like that. I'm even thinking maybe bringing in families and possibly actually adding that connection of the parents sending in maybe photos of the children as they were babies,
They
and
would
we can
love that.
compare and talk
Yeah.
around the differences between the frog and also their bodies and what changes we've seen. So
And that'll help them understand the story, and we can then go back to that central question. How are they using,
Yes.
you know, tier 2 words? How are they using sentences to describe what they understand about the book, connected to their own
I
experiences
like
too?
that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to bring in that family connection here. So that's great.
Okay. I
Krenza,
like
can
that.
we, as we look at this question, take a look at the focus words, and that way
Absolutely.
we can add them to the bubble map,
Great
and
idea.
we're not just planning activities just on that content about the fish and the frog changing, but also ways we can bring in the focus words and how we can help them understand those deeply.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. The first one that comes to mind for me is separated and inseparable. At first they're together, inseparable, and then they're separated. So maybe we can lift that up.
That's a great word.
But just wanted to show you that example and how that works in action.
All right, thanks, Nathan. And I hope that was helpful to everybody to see it in action. And so, as the ladies mentioned in the video, and also Nathan, all of those resources that they use are found on Cox Campus. You can download them all for free after you create your free account. And so we're going to keep the cycle going. And so we're now into step 3. And so here is where you observe, record, and assess what you see. And so with this step here, you want to use some formative assessments, observations, and feedback to check children's progress regularly. And you want to remember that it's student-centered and teacher-validated. And so we have a video that shows you how phase 3 works. Take a look.
Welcome back to Lesson 3 and to Phase 3 of the assessment cycle. Observation. Observation is the most powerful and frequently used method for collecting data on children's development in the birth to 5 space. In this lesson, you will learn all about the process of gathering information on children's development using observation as your primary tool. Do you enjoy taking pictures when you travel? It's so much fun to look at them later when you are back at home as you reminisce about the highlights of your trip. An observation is a lot like a photograph. It captures a moment in time. But just like you can't, nor would you want to take a picture of everything you encounter on a trip, you cannot and should not try to observe everything, at least not all at the same time. Observations are intentional and guided by what you do in the first 2 phases of the assessment cycle.
So this, the slide that the video that you just saw, just was kind of explaining the importance of observation. And I'm sure you all know how very important that is, to make sure that you are always being aware of where your children are developmentally. And I have a couple of characteristics on how progress monitoring works on the next slide. Okay, so here, regardless of your children's ages, effective progress monitoring is always, always important. And so it's always important that you make sure that they are developmentally appropriate. So making sure that your progress monitoring is for the children that you're serving. So if it's supposed to be for infants, then that's what you should be zoning in on. So try not to, get your assessments confused or try to overlap them with, a toddler one, because they're almost toddlers. If they're currently an infant, treat them as such. And so also embedded, make sure that it's frequent and it's ongoing in your daily routine. So incorporate ways throughout your week and throughout your day where you can assess your children and make sure that they're on target. Directly link them to curriculum and instruction. So always try to work smarter and not harder. So directly associate them with your early learning standards. So being aware of those Georgia early learning standards, and then also making sure that they're culturally and linguistically responsive. Okay, so along with that, we have 5 teaching strategies. So by integrating these elements into your teaching approach, you can effectively use data to support and enhance each child's unique brilliance, fostering an environment that promotes growth and learning and achievement. So first, you want to acknowledge and describe your children's learning. You want to coach children's efforts and make suggestions on how they can do things better. Extend children's thinking by asking those open-ended questions, using prompts, and encouraging conversations throughout the day. Demonstrating effective learning behaviors. So if you want children to acquire certain skills, demonstrating them for them first is always important. It's just the same way that I modeled that for you all earlier with the activities where I did it first, and then I encouraged you, I did it with you, and then I encourage you to do it by yourself. So we want to use that same method when we're doing it for our children. And the last teaching strategy is to give information to expand children's knowledge base and let children know what is expected of them. So don't assume that they know because it's been introduced, maybe a couple days ago, last month, or maybe from a previous class. Always give them information based on where they are in that current time. So in order to do that, we do have some progress monitoring tools that are for free on our Cox Campus website. So there's an infant and toddler observation tool, and it's located in our resource folder, resource library on Cox Campus. You can use these however you see fit. We do have some suggested timeframes on the top of the observation tools. So some of them will vary from week to week, month to month, but you just decide how it works best for you and your program. So when you see things happen with your children, when you hear things happening with your children, document it. Make sure that you're noticing things that are happening for the typical child age range. And this is also a familiar slide that you will see, a resource document that you will see on Cox Campus. And so they are categorized, so you can just put in the age group that you serve and it'll pull up so you can filter your progress monitoring tools. So you'll see them based on age group, you'll see them based on whichever course it aligns to, and then it'll also give you the frequency on when and how often you should be using the assessment tool. And then there's also some Rollins outcomes that you can download as well, that you can kind of use in supplication with each other so that they work seamless together. Okay, so number 4 is reflect on the results and analyze the data. So you want to make sure that you are reflecting. So try not to just move from one step to the next without doing some reflection. So you want to know the impact, you want to identify some barriers, and you want to give feedback. So some constructive feedback. Remember that it's a two-way communication. So recognizing some factors that are hindering children's progress, such as learning difficulties that you notice, or they may be experiencing some external challenges outside of the classroom. So those are some things that you want to always be aware of because it does affect their learning. Provide them timely and specific and actionable feedback to guide their learning and their development. And you want to encourage children to give feedback on their learning experiences. So allow children to say, I don't understand, or I don't get it, or can you go over it again, or I need some more practice. Encourage children to use their language, their voices, to express to you that they need some more support. And you want to use that information to enhance your teaching praxis. And so sometimes children may not have the verbal, and so pay attention to the nonverbals. So the confused looks, the no responses, or, raising the hand, or, looking to appear, those are all indications that a child may be struggling or not sure on how to respond appropriately. Okay, Nathan's going to wrap up the cycle for us.
All right, we're at phase 5 of the cycle, and that would be to respond. So you've set your goals, you implement the learning, observe throughout, reflect on the data, and now respond by making adjustments. So when we respond, we want to take responsibility and ownership, but also be flexible, embrace change, and of course, scaffold learning. And there are different ways to do that through setting up small groups, and also just in your lesson planning as you're planning for each next developmental phase of the classroom, whether it's a month or a week when you're doing bubble maps. So different ways to scaffold. And let's, okay, so this is the talk ladder, which is one example of observing children and making some little adjustments. So at the bottom, you'll see if a children attempts to communicate through nonverbal means, what can you do as a safety net to sort of support and scaffold their learning? The safety net is off to the right of the ladder. So that would be to answer a question for the child using well-formed sentences. If they're at the level where they're saying 1 to 3 word phrases using tier 1 words, you can restate what they said and use a more complex sentence. If they say complete sentences using tier 1 words, you can then support them with the safety net of using either or questions to encourage the use of tier 2 words, and use those tier 2 words in conversations with the child. If they say a complete sentence using tier 2 words, you can ask more open-ended questions to probe for more information. And if they say multiple sentences using tier 2 words, you can push in the use of transition words. So there's always a safety net to go with each ladder rung. This is one simple way to respond. Now, this is a little more complex way to respond. And what we have here is using that data to inform the planning. And we saw that a little bit when Maggie and Corinza were in the video doing the bubble maps. They were considering the children. And so to do that, not only are we considering, oh, what would be a fun music and movement related to the book, but where are the needs? Where are the needs of the children right now? And I have on here some information, like off to the left, you see 2 different types of data. One is a matrix that just has the children's names, just an example there. Are they using labels in the classroom to return material? And are they moving from left to right and top to bottom when pretending to read or write? And then more generally, using print concepts, we have a collection of data here from the TSG. And I can see for that pre-K class, 15 children in the classroom are below the expectation based on the research, which is that blue color band. And since they're below and using print concepts, and since I see that this group of 5 children, some of them are also needing some help, it says WH with help, or there's an X by it, they're not doing the left to right. Some might be, recognizing the labels, but all this information is important for me to know not only how to group the children, but what am I planning for the next week? What's going into these bubble maps? So now I'm going to come up with some activity related to either emergent literacy. We put these labels in here. You can put your own labels as well. And let me ask you, so knowing this information, what you see here about concepts of print, what is an activity that you would do? How would you provide a change in your environment or make a plan for the children in small groups? What area would you use? It can be in one of these bubbles or it can be your own idea. Feel free to unmute or put in the chat. Anybody have any ideas? As you're thinking about it, I'll share one. One of the ideas of print is just the idea that there's a message. That print has a message. There's words here and it means something. So that labeling in the classroom, labeling the materials, you know, they see the picture and they see the word, but pointing it out and making sure and having those, and maybe have a sorting activity. I see dramatic play, more print. Exactly. That's what I was going to say. In that dramatic play area, having the food labeled, and then really pointing that out and going over that and creating activities around that, maybe sorting activities. Recipes. I like that, and lists, top to bottom, left to right. So having activities that provide that. So now, not only are we taking a theme based on an anchor book, putting it in here so that we can definitely throughout the day and consistently focus on those focus words and those concepts of print, but also including where the children are. And so when we do common planning, we pull out the bubble map, but we also have the children the teachers look at their data. It's so important. And that brings the full cycle to completion, because now you're making those adjustments. Let's look at a video as an example here. And I like all the ideas coming up in the chat here. Thank you.
Spending time reflecting on and analyzing the data I collected on Riley, I made a plan to adjust my teaching to support her moving forward. I decided I would limit the focus words to 3 and introduce them to her prior to the initial read, along with visuals if appropriate to support her comprehension of the story. I also would provide additional small group reads for her to give her the opportunity to hear the story with fewer children, where I could be more explicit in explaining what was happening in the story. In addition, I would plan some very intentional small groups with the purpose of teaching and reinforcing the main idea of the story and the targeted vocabulary. When engaging her in conversations or asking her questions about the story, I would provide safety nets such as yes or no questions and either or questions to allow her to communicate and use the focus words.
All right. All right, Jennifer, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right, thanks. Okay, so this is the snippet that we have pulled from the Closer Look document. It's also not Closer Look, sorry, the Ecosystem Construction 2.0 document. And so this here is on page 18. We did put it so that you can locate it easily if you've already downloaded a copy. And so this is our rubric. And so this is what you would use when you are ready to do observations in your classrooms on the element 7. And so it provides you with the Cox Campus courses that you can take in preparation, or you can assign to your teachers. It gives you a description on what this element is all about, and it gives you some sources of evidence, things that you can use when you are looking for observation and intentional monitoring of children's progress in your classrooms. And then there's also some documents that it sends you to or refers you to, such as the Closer Look document. So this here has, like the rubric goes from emerging, rating number 1, up to established, rating 3. Column 1, so when you are looking in the emerging area, and these are the things that are not necessarily happening. So you may see that the teacher rarely documents children's progress. So if these things are happening, this is the rating that you would give this particular classroom, not necessarily the entire site, but your classroom, whichever the room that you're observing. If the teacher is having some evidence, she may have some sort of a system where she, sometimes documents some of the things that the children do, or some of the things that they say. Small groups are, occasionally being done in the classroom. So this would be in the middle, a mid-score of a 2. And 3 would be established, where it's strong evidence. So there's a clear comprehensive system that the teacher uses. She inputs documentation regularly on all of her children. She's very intentional. She takes that information that she acquires from her progress monitoring and she incorporates it into her lesson. So she's, systematically sharing that information with families during parent-teacher conferences. Just every opportunity is being used and it's very strong. So this teacher in this classroom would get a 3 as a rating. And then you will notice that we do have some midpoint scores of a 1.5 or a 2.5. So this is typically given when there are evidence of a little bit here and a little bit there, but she's not quite a 2, but she's doing some of the things in the column 2. Or she's not quite a 3, but she's doing all of 2, but some things in the 3 column. And so a 2.5 would be a reasonable score to give. And so I hope that this rubric is helpful when we do encourage you all to go back and do your observations on element 7. Any questions, please drop them in the chat or come up off mute. But this is our rubric that we do suggest for you all to use.
Jennifer, what I'm noticing about all this that I think is key is that this is different than the other ones because a lot of the other ones we can go in a classroom and get all the information we need through an observation in a classroom. When I typically do this type of observation, I'm noticing that I need more information usually. I mean, I might see a teacher doing some observations. I might see it in action. I may not sometimes because I just wasn't there for the right time. But even if I see them do it, I need to know, are they using that information? What are they doing with it? Are they reflecting on it? So to get the full picture to be established, I need to interview the teacher or know something about, if I'm a director, I might know, but just going to visit a classroom that I'm not as familiar with, this is definitely
Yes.
That's
Very good. Thank you, Nathan, for pointing that out. So that might be helpful for you all when you do your observations on element 7. What he's saying is that it's not going to be as evident for you to notice after one classroom observation. So you're going to have to, go regularly. You may even have to pull that teacher and ask that teacher to supply you with some evidence that she or he is documented her children's progress throughout the week or throughout the month or the quarter. So there's going to be some other pieces of information, such as, I need to see your lesson plan. I need to see maybe a series of lesson plans so that I can see that this is something consistently being done. And so this is not a one time and you're done type of observation. So you may have to go in, you may have to ask more questions, request for more sources of evidence to give a more reasonable score for this teacher. So thank you for bringing that up because that is things to consider for this particular element as opposed to all the other elements.
And I see Elena was asking about that. I don't know if that clarifies for you, Elena, what we were talking about. You asked if it was for teachers. Okay, good.
All right, thanks. Okay, and so this slide here is pulled from page 43 in the Ecosystem Construction Measure 2.0 document. And so this is just one of our examples of observation forms. So we do have options that you can use. This is not the only option, but this is one of them. So when you go into the classroom to rate element 7, this is one of the forms that you can document your evidence. So you can, write notes about things that you've seen. You can write notes about things that the teacher has expressed. If you were able to have a conversation with him or her. And so this is where you would input that information and you would input the rating on page 43 as well. Okay, so after we do have a cycle that not a cycle, but it's a process that we encourage you to use. And so when you are doing your observations, we always encourage observations come first. So this is where you're going to gather information, as much information as you can, with your ratings and everything, your notes. So this is all a part of the observation part. And then after that, you're going to do some reflection on that information. So you won't necessarily pull the teacher and then just start, sharing everything that you found. You're going to reflect on it. So maybe you and, your other leaders at your sites, you would come together and, express, hey, I had an observation in Miss Jane's classroom. This is some of the evidence that I was able to acquire. Let's talk about it. And then you're going to reflect on that information. You're going to, get your ratings assigned. And then you're going to collaborate and identify what are some priority areas we can suggest for this particular classroom. And then lastly, you're going to take action. So at that point, you're going to schedule some time to get with your teachers that you've observed, and you're going to share that information with them. So you're going to develop an action plan part of that conversation. So you guys are going to all come together and come up with some action steps and some resources and figure out, who's going to be responsible for what, how you're going to play a role in that action plan. Okay, and on the next slide, we do have some examples of what some of your action steps can look like. And so some of the action steps you might include could be encouraging a staff to take some Cox Campus related courses. So as you saw on that rubric at the top, there were some suggested courses. You can pull those exact courses from that document and put them on the action plan so that you already know what courses this teacher needs to take. You might even share a Cox Campus resource. So you may share the closer look document where the teacher can actually look at what this element is all about, what it looks like in the classroom, and what are some other supports or resources that she can use to incorporate in her instruction. You might implement some specific teaching practices that she can work on. You might encourage some development of common planning time. So you may say, okay, maybe you need an additional 20 or 30 minutes in the day or in the week for you to have some time to kind of refocus your lesson plan, because there are some areas where you could, improve and help your children more. And then a last step would be for the teacher to observe her own classroom. So, or a fellow colleague's classroom, someone who's doing something really well, and you want her or him to see it in action, being done by a fellow colleague. So those are some action steps that you could use. You definitely can come up with your own, but this is just a good start for you to reflect on.
All right, so let's review our objectives. Thank you all for being here today. Our objectives were to review that ecosystem, check. Go over the reflections about element 6. Thank you for those activities, Jennifer, and review that a little bit. And now today we covered element 7, the observation and progress monitoring. So next time we're gonna reflect on that one. So let's look at our next steps. All right, next steps are complete or review the ecosystem course. And there was a question earlier on about whether we were talking about the emergent literacy course or the ecosystem course. And I did put it in the chat, but I want to clarify that the emergent literacy course was specifically about element 6, but the ecosystem course itself is the one that we're asking everybody to take in order for this to be, so you have all the information that we're going over in this. So it's more of a review and a summary and support in action. So the course itself is the prerequisite. So if you haven't taken that, please complete that, and you can always go back and review it. Review the ECM 2.0 document, the closer look document, observe and rate element 7. So you might have to know about the teacher and what they do in the classroom, or what they don't do in either case, to be able to rate. So then bring that back next month when we meet on April 3rd, and we will review that, and we'll have an opportunity to be in small groups and talk about what we saw, what we rated, why we rated it, and have a conversation around it. So check your email for follow-ups, and share out with others. And I see a question in the chat. Would that joint action plan be the section of the ECM making a few goals for each, meaning you develop an action plan for each element, or is it however, okay. That would be, so what we recommend is in the joint action plan, you are doing each element. What we typically do at the beginning of a year when we work with a school is we decide on 3 main elements to focus on. But for this cohort, we're kind of preparing you for each one. So each time we do one, you would use one of those joint action plans and put the element as whatever element we're working on. And we always recommend, like Jennifer talked about, like taking the course around that element is the first thing. And those courses are suggested on the ECM. So if you look over the ECM under each area, it tells you what courses align with each element. So that would be your first step. And then you would kind of come up with different steps for your joint action plan. And there's a site joint action plan and a classroom joint action plan. So it just depends on how helpful it is to you. Yeah, I think that would be
Yeah.
answer your question. Yeah, however it's helpful to you.
And the way the plans are, just to add, the way the plans are designed, you can put multiple goals on one plan. So if you want, like you said, you know, if you want to work on more than one element at a time, or if you want to just focus on one element, you can have 2 to 3 goals per element, or, you know, 1 goal per element. It just depends. You make it work for your organization, but you do have freedom to work it however you see fit. So,
And I'm just sharing real quick. This is an example. I put it in the chat, but I wanted to show this since we're talking about it. It has, you know, the site, the element, children as conversational partners, the related course, meaningful conversations. What's the goal? We want all staff to engage children in meaningful conversations throughout the day. That's pretty straightforward. And then these are some of the action steps as an example, what resources you need, who's responsible, what, you know, you set yourself a deadline, and then you can see this says in progress, IP, or A for achieved. So this is just an example for you to look over. You'll have your own goals. And when we use this, we use it with ourselves as coaches or with a coach who's going through this process. So you see the word coach in there. But whoever is that mentor, teacher, coach, director, whoever's working with the teacher on it might be responsible, or the teacher's being responsible to take the course, and then you have some debrief sessions on that. So there's some different things. I hope this was helpful to share this out.
and feel free to, you know, reach out to us via email or, you know, after this, we do have a little time to, you know, break things down if you have some specific questions.
And this is our survey. So, you know, if you can just take a moment, let us know how we did. And I think it's going to pop up, right? Here it is. All right. So on a scale from 1 to 5, 5 is the highest and 1 is the lowest. And we do appreciate your honest feedback as we do consider this. We look over it and it helps us for planning for next month and also for next year as we move forward and creating these opportunities. And I want to just thank everybody as you're doing this. Thank you so much for taking the time today and for your engagement. Really appreciate everybody showing up today.
Yes, thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. Hope to see you all next month. And please tell your colleagues to join as well.
If you have any questions, we do have a few minutes here. If you want to put anything in the chat or unmute.
Yes. Y'all are all welcome and have a great rest of your day.